The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language. Mature audiences are cleared to proceed.
Checking into a hotel room. Ba-da-da, ba-ba-da.
I think we're going to need a bigger bed.
David, I got a package here labeled "From Russia with Love."
What are we waiting for? Let's open it up.
Shall we begin?
In the field of anthropology, there is no such thing as the first Neanderthal or the first Homo sapiens as an individual. Speciation is a process that spans thousands of years at least. But when it comes to identifying the first member of the species, Spius heros cinematicus, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, or in this case, 007. James Bond is the undisputed granddaddy of all screen spy heroes. I'm Todd.
And I'm Dave, and we like to talk about spy movies.
He's handsome, he's competent, cool, collected,
and kind of an asshole.
If you're gonna swing at the king, you best not miss. So let's hope our aim is true in this episode of Spies Like Us.
We're here to discuss the second Bond film, which some people believe to be the best, From Russia with Love, 1963. Follows immediately after 1962's Dr. No.
Right, and I noticed from my research that they had planned this as a series from the beginning. It's not like they just had like one film that they did and said, "Oh, that was successful. Let's make another." No, in fact, they wanted to sign the actor for at least 5, and their first choice was Cary Grant, which I believe we have mentioned before. Remember, like North by Northwest is the film that like is really just creeping up to this edge of actual spy movies. So he'd be a logical choice. Always planned as a series, Cary Grant. Sean Connery, though, was relatively unknown, and he was willing to sign up to do 5 movies.
Oh, well, you know what I didn't know was that From Russia with Love is a direct sequel to Dr. No. I mean, how many sequels were there?
My experience with the Bond films, especially like the early ones, is very spotty. Like I haven't seen a lot of them. In fact, I think this is the first one that I've really like paid close attention to.
Right.
I love the Daniel Craig stuff, but that came after the Jason Bourne films, which I'm a huge fan of, and I think the Daniel Craig movies are like a weird example of good, forgettable, good. Forgettable, good. Like they just seem to follow that formula.
Right.
At least for me. I mean, when I went back, I remembered enjoying. I know we're getting a little off topic on this movie, but I wanted to talk about our experience with Bond. You know, like where are you and I coming at this movie from as viewers? And I just wanted to say, like, when I go back and look at Casino Royale, I remember it being a good film, but every time I watch it again, I'm amazed again. Like, it's a fucking great film.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the Daniel Craig ones, I think, were really, really, I guess, steps above previous Bond stuff. I mean, I grew up as a kid watching them and thought they were cool because of explosions, but as I got older and got into more, like, I guess, espionage-type films, I realized that none of the Bond films were really spy films, but they were like action films with like, spies in them.
Yeah, like they always felt to me like my dad's movies, you know?
Right.
Yeah, and I just never like really super clicked with the character until the Daniel Craig stuff came along. But I was really happy to take a deep dive into this important cinematic spy, and also like I know I feel like I keep coming back to this, but like I really did not realize just how important he is. until I really started making these lists of movies and looking into the history and finding out all about it.
Right.
You were saying like you hadn't realized, like, one thing you hadn't realized, that this was a direct sequel to Doctor No, and that like basically it's the same villain, sort of.
Well, I mean, Spectre kind of holds the main villain, I guess, kind of overarching through a lot of the movies.
Right. Like, my impression had always been that, like, just in every single, that it was episodic, or not episodic, but like that each film just kind of stood alone by itself, and in each one there was like some certain villain,
Yeah.
and James Bond would defeat him, and then we'd never hear from him again.
Right.
But in this one, like, that was the first thing I noticed, is like, as well as you, like, that no, there's a certain Spectre organization that like ties all of these movies together. So I went digging in on like the Wikipedias and blah blah, and I find that Spectre's the main enemy in all of the Connery films, which he ended up doing 7 of.
Oh, wow. What was one that they weren't really in?
Yeah, that was the third, apparently the third one, but in 1 through 7,
Oh, okay.
yeah, they're the main villains. So it's much more of a, I don't know, I guess much more of a Star Wars-y kind of cinematic universe that they're putting together with these sequels, where we're always fighting against the same, like, we're always fighting against the Empire. Well, here we're always fighting against Spectre, which totally was not my expectation. I thought every single one was just going to have an individual villain and be boxed,
Yeah.
separate from the others.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing too about Spectre, where in the original novels by Ian Fleming, they didn't play that prominent of a role. And here, like, it's... Go ahead.
Oh, in the novels, they didn't play that much of a role?
They weren't initially written in. Like, I don't think they don't exist in the novel Dr. No.
Right.
And they don't exist even in From Russia with Love, the novel.
Right.
By the time... Now, you got to remember, like, Fleming's started writing his novels a lot before they started making them into films. But at this point, by the time they're making the first Bond film, which is Dr. No, let's see, Fleming is already like on like book number 5 or 6. Like, he's way ahead of them. But it looks like he's signed on to this deal, and now he knows they're going to make him a bunch of movies, and he's worried. One account describes that he's worried that his Cold War stuff is not going to play with audiences in the movies anymore.
Oh.
So he introduces the Spectre faction into his novels, starting around, like, I forget exactly which one, but about the same time that they're starting to make the movies, and he like hands them the movie makers, and says, here, you can make this your primary villain, so that, again, like, for one thing, one account I had was that it was Fleming's concern that the Cold War was soon going to be not relevant, which he was wrong about.
Very wrong.
And the other account is that the producers of the movie, and remember, they've got this 5-series plan. They're putting a lot into it. They didn't want it to be super political, so that the other account is that they went to Fleming and said, can you invent something that is an enemy for James Bond that isn't the Russians, isn't the Chinese, isn't the, whoever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it makes it easier to kind of broaden the audience if it's just some like ominous, corporate, wealthy giant that's kind of pulling strings from behind. It kind of can appeal to a bigger audience, maybe.
Sure. Well, yeah, and it probably like informs a lot of like other movies and cinematic themes that we as the audience were starting to become concerned about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just double checked it, or I just spotted it. It's actually he's on book 9, Thunderball. He's writing book 9 at the time that they're just making the first movie.
Okay. Oh, that's a lot. Oh, so he kind of really just specifically did this for the movies.
It definitely looks like that, except it's just not clear whether it was his germ of an idea or the producer's germ of an idea. But either way, they seem to see eye to eye on the overall concept.
Right.
So, yeah, so I don't know. We'll have to check out the Roger Moore and the later films, and maybe those are the reason that I always thought of these films as being like standalones.
Stand alone. Yeah, maybe.
But 1 through 7 is all Sean Connery and all Spectre. So they kind of create like a certain series there. But what else? What else we got to say about this movie?
I think the sound effects are pretty ridiculous. Everything is super duper loud and kind of awkward. Um, yeah, I mean,
I
that's the
agree. I agree. There's some weird Foley choices in this one.
yeah. It's always like very high volume and shocking and very awkward moments.
Like right in your face. Like
Yeah.
I mean there were a few that I noticed, but like the worst offender I thought was like when Sylvia, who's just this girl that James Bond is like macking on or whatever
uh
when he gets the call to go to MI6. She's kind of groping at him while he's trying to make a phone call, and he slaps her hand away. And the slap is like a fucking bullwhip crack.
Yeah, it's like super, super, super loud. Yeah. And then yeah, and then like the weird places they put in the music, and it's like overly loud. It doesn't even fit. It's like dead center and the loudest thing you hear. Like number three's like crop on the chair or whatever. It sounds like a truck hit a like side of the wall or something.
And like when, like, let's get some oil on the door hinges at MI6 HQ. Can we do
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Like he comes in and the door's like, yeah.
yeah. It's like we're in like a horror film or something. Yeah.
Speaking of sound effects, let's check on this. Hey, Maura, did we get the minus spy points buzzer fixed from last episode?
The tradecraft analysis system has been repaired.
Well, that's good because I think we might need it for this one.
Let's go to the briefing room and start tearing this shit apart.
Voice pattern recognized. Retinal scan complete. Validating security clearance. Clearance granted. You may now enter the briefing room.
Before we get like too far into the plot, I got some minor negative spy points. I just want to flag that like kind of set the table for what's to come.
Is this kind of the appetizer?
I'm just saying I think we're gonna need that minus spy points buzzer a lot
Yeah.
more than we're gonna need the plus spy points buzzer for this episode. The movie begins with a like kind of a clever little thing where like we think we're looking at James Bond, doing some spy stuff, and he gets killed. Oh no, our hero's dead before the movie has even begun, which is kind of cool. But like there was what they're doing is they're like testing out one of their assassins to try to see if he can kill the actual James Bond, which like he does, and it's Spectre, so whatever. Like they sacrificed one of their guys, blah 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 blah. But there's no reason for them to have put a face mask on the fake James Bond.
Yeah, I mean it was purely cinematic.
I'm just saying, if you think about it,
Yeah.
there's no reason for that guy to be wearing a Mission Impossible mask. Minus
Yeah.
my. Another quick one. The next thing we see is like that number 5, who's the guy that he's like the master planner guy for Spectre. He's in the middle of a chess game, and Spectre wants to see him, and that's fine. And they have a waiter give him bring him his drink, and there's a little napkin under the drink, and it shows the Spectre symbol, and that's all fucking awesome. But you know what, Spectre? You could just wait 10 minutes. It's not that important. Like it looks cool, but it's so like you need the guy to show up at HQ. That's fine. You could wait 20 minutes until his chess game is over and just say like, hey, the boss wants to see you. Instead, you have infiltrated the wait staff, which is a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of risk, like, where's the real waiter? Like tied and gagged in the basement or something? Like, it's just, I don't know.
Or maybe Spectre just has people everywhere, or they had something on the waiter and they threatened his life just so he could deliver a message to a guy who was about to finish his chess match.
I mean, just in case. Just in case. They needed to get, like, it's fucking 20 minutes. Dude, Spectre, get your game together. I have faith in you. All right. Dave, minus those little flourishes, which just set off little alarm bells in my head.
Lots of them.
What this movie is going to be about.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep into it, can you take us through the different players and their win conditions and their plans, so that as we go through the plot, we'll be able to understand why they're doing what they're doing and rate them on how well they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not exactly clear what the motives behind Spectre at this point is, other than maybe killing James Bond over some sort of, like, I guess, vendetta or whatever. I don't know. But I guess the original plan is to kind of lure in James Bond with promise of getting a Lecter, which is the Russian encoding machine that the KGB owns or something. So they find this kind of clerk girl that's worked for the country, and I think she worked for the KGB, and she's kind of a clerk. I don't know exactly the extent of her.
No, not cinematographer. Cryptographer.
Cryptographer, that's what she is. She's a cryptographer.
She probably works with the Lecter. She's the one that, like, translates the messages and then brings them to the
That's right. She was a cryptographer. They had a whole joke with James, like, flirting with her. Well, I'm no cryptographer, but anyway. So their idea is they kind of find this girl that they've profiled as, like, being the good lure for Bond, because, in every Bond film, there's always a girl to lure him in. Poor guy can't find a good girl, I guess. I don't know. Well, so the idea is Spectre is going to pretend to be the KGB. And they know Tatiana, who is our hot steaming Russian that they're going to lure Bond with or whatever. She's a cryptographer. She's worked in the offices of the KGB. She seems to be a loyal Russian civil servant, who has also worked in high security areas. So they're going to come at her as, like, generals of the KGB. So she's going to want to serve her country and do her duty. But in reality, they're Spectre. And they're basically using her to lure out James Bond. And I guess later in the film, we find out they're going to sell the Lecter back to the Russians. So I don't know if this is part of the biggest plan. But anyway.
So wait. Lay it out for me, like, just step by step. If everything Spectre is trying to do works out, like what happens? And
the first set in motion is kind of to get the Russians and the British against each other. So how they're going to kind of do that is create the situation with Tatiana and James Bond, where James Bond is going to, like, steal the Lecter or something. And I don't know, maybe they were planning on killing Tatiana and James Bond later, or made it look like James killed Tatiana, or she had suicided or something. But eventually this is going to create turmoil between the Russians and the British. They're going to sell the Lecter back to the Russians for a heap load of money. They're probably going to profiteer off of like the war that's going to drop, like by they even say it in the film that they're trying to get this Cold War warm going or something like that. So the idea is they want to make it look like the Russians and the British are hurting each other, but they're just profiting off of the turmoil, I guess. That's my
right. So they got 3 goals.
Right. I think one of their big goals, one of their, not their biggest goals, but one of their step-by-step goals is to get Bond killed. Probably off of.
Right. So three goals are accomplished by one operation.
Which is pretty hefty.
Number one, James Bond, or actually 4. Actually, I think 4. Number 1, James Bond is dead.
Yeah.
And that's just a fuck you for killing Dr. No in the first movie.
Yeah.
That's just a little. That's just a little bit of revenge.
Yeah. It's like the cherry on top or something.
Right. Number 2, they want him to die in a humiliating way that will disparage the MI6.
Right.
Number 3, they want to set the British and Russians on edge against each other and kind of like heat up the Cold War, like turn up the burner a little bit.
Right.
And then number 4, just like make a little money by selling the Lecter back to the Russians.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure they're going to profiteer off of the warming up the Cold War. I think it's not explicitly said, but I mean, like considering the level of, I guess, corporate enterprise Spectre has, they're probably war profiteers. That would be my best guess.
At this point, yes.
Yeah.
At this point, yes. I wonder if they're a little more subtle or a little more political in other movies, which I have not seen. So that for right now, that's just an open question.
Yeah.
For me.
But I do want to say my number 1 tradecraft comes out pretty early. Their overall plan, it was pretty cool. But what I think was really, really, really awesome was their idea to pretend to be the KGB. That one, they profiled this girl that was already very loyal as a Russian civil servant who had high security clearances, presumably, worked for the KGB, didn't screw anybody over. She's like the perfect candidate. Not only did they profile this girl, they also like pulled off pretending to be the KGB, like some high-end generals, because she was kind of low on the totem pole, right? This isn't like, Alan Dulles, Master Spy or something.
Right.
Or like the guy serving under Gorbachev here. This is like some lady that does cryptography and right now is probably doing like other kind of bureaucratic like jobs in the office. And she's proven to be like loyal to, to Russia and the KGB or whatever. So we got this very attractive young woman who has security clearances. She's smart, and she has access to a Lecter. And so we know that she's going to actually be able to, one, probably be considered attractive by James, and so kind of lure him in a physical.
I get it. And you calling that your number 1 best tradecraft in the movie? Because
they didn't have to do anything. All they had to do was say they had to put on like one little performance, which I mean, cinematically, it wasn't that it wasn't that convincing to me. If I was in that seat and I got yelled at by like Nazi lady, I wasn't gonna leave the room alive. I would have some questions,
which I love, but we got so much more movie to go on.
Sorry.
We gotta keep this moving. I'm with you. This is my number 2 best tradecraft in the movie that I had marked was just the overall Spectre plan. It's a winner. It's ambitious, but it's possible. And like I said, like it can accomplish a bunch of things in a single operation, all of which benefit Spectre to the detriment of the rest of the espionage community. Right. And I like this plan. And you know what? This is a good time to mention that this script was rewritten sometimes on the fly, like while they were filming, to include Spectre into the plot. The original
Oh,
novel, remember the
yeah,
original novel, there's no Spectre in it. The
right,
idea of Spectre had not yet occurred to Ian Fleming when he wrote this novel.
right.
So I also just want to, like, so the idea of Dr. No being from the first film, being a Spectre agent, that's easy to just like slap on.
Oh yeah,
You,
easily.
you can just insert that. It takes like 5 minutes of like writing that into the script. He can just mention that he works for Spectre, and you're done. But
Yeah,
in this movie, they had to really seriously rework the script in order to make Spectre the main enemy. Because in the original novel, it was just an operation of MI6 trying to steal the Lecter from the KGB. And there I got to stop you for another one, too, because you've said the KGB so many times, and I got to bring this up. They're not called this KGB in this film.
oh, that's right. They're not.
No, they're called
Yeah,
Smersh. They're called
Smirch.
Smersh,
Yeah.
which is an and when I saw that, I immediately thought like, oh, I think we talked about that in one of our previous films, but I looked back on our notes and we actually didn't. But I found the note that triggered me. You see, okay, walk with me on this one, right? I'm going to
All
jump
right.
ahead in our notes a little.
Okay.
Do you remember in the Man Who Knew Too Much, 1956 version, we referred to the French intelligence
Yeah, the District
as,
Bureau.
that's the exact one.
Yeah.
In fact, that's a World War II intelligence agency that was dissolved in 1940,
Okay.
before the end of the war.
Okay.
It didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
SMERSH, which SMERSH, it's kind of the same thing. It's a counterintelligence agency that was formed during World War II and again also was dissolved at the end of the war. In fact, I think 1946. So a full 15 years before this film is made, we're still talking about SMERSH, which is an agency that doesn't technically exist. But this gives rise to a question, and I think it's interesting. Now, see, like what I read on Wiki is like that, like even though like these agencies were dissolved, like decades ago, um, intelligence agencies still referred to them as such because that was the name that they remembered them as
Yeah.
during the war. And think about this: when you change your organization of your intelligence agencies, it's not like you go out and make a public statement to the world and say like, "Hey guys, you know, we used to be SMERSH, but we decided now we're going to be called the KGB."
Yeah.
It could be decades, apparently, possibly, that before like other people catch up with the parlance, like you follow me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the day that the CIA, like how long was it? Like when the CIA was created, I mean, how long was it? And this is an honest question. I don't know the answer, and we're not going to wiki it right now. But I
Yeah.
think it's an interesting one. Like, how long was it before the Russians and our other opponents in the Cold War caught on to the fact that there even existed a CIA?
Well, I'm
I
sure
mean,
they knew quite a while because they probably had double agents in the MI6, and I think the MI6 are the way. Well, the British were pretty much like founded our intelligence agents, like our intelligence practices. or at least were an enormous impact on the beginning, because they needed a lot of our help in World War II. And I think they had a lot to do with behind the formation of the CIA.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's and actually when we finally do get to the Good Shepherd, this is kind of shown a little bit, and it's I'm actually pretty hyped for that eventually.
Well, that's about enough that I wanted to say about that. Again, like I wanna put a pin on the other players' plans, motivations, and win conditions. Can we go back to that? So we know what Spectre's trying to do.
Right.
What's and then Tatiana, that's the patsy that you just described. That's the girl that they.
I think her idea is she's just being loyal to, the motherland, or like whatever, like a Smirsh. Since I've been corrected, and so, but she kind of haplessly falls in love with James Bond, which is every Bond film there is. James falls in love with the girl that he's not supposed to. The girl falls in love with him that's not supposed to, and then somehow it doesn't work out.
What I want you to do here is think of it like a board game. Think of it like one player is playing Spectre. Now, if you're playing Tatiana, what's your win condition?
Oh, just do whatever Smirch tells you, and then get like a pension.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now you're a player playing James Bond. What's your win condition?
James is to get as much information as possible. I don't know if I should jump ahead to my number 2 best statecraft.
Nah, I'm going to cut you off there, dude. James' plan is to get the Lecter.
Well, there's that. Well, that's what I was saying. So they knew it was a trap ahead of time.
That is true.
Yeah, so I think his objective is to get as much.
But also remember that. Number 5, the Spider Mastermind chess player, like he pre-planned that. He knew, which also I like, and maybe that should have been like, let's give him some plus 5 points right there.
Yeah.
Because that's also dope that he knows that his plan will look like a trap to the British, but he has analyzed their psychology, and whether this is true or not in reality, in the film, in the fiction of the film, it's true, and it works out that the British can't resist the bait.
Yeah.
So good on him.
And then I think the Russians' plan, from all of this, they're going to get really upset, and then they're just going to go after England. But they're completely unaware of the Lecter plot. So when Spectre is supposedly going to get a hold of the Lecter and sell it back to them, they're basically doing them a favor. Hey, by the way, did you know one of your encoders got, stolen? Here it is. So it really is a great plan on number 5's side, I guess.
Right. I think all we need to know about the Russians and their motivation, and they're not key in this movie, but they are important.
Yeah.
The movie doesn't work without them. Their motivation is Spectre at some point is going to trigger them and make them think that the Brits are opening killing war against them, and they want to kill the Turkish MI6 contact in retaliation.
Right.
And then they don't know that there's also a plan to steal the Lecter, but obviously they want to prevent that. And once the Lecter gets stolen, because they don't know anything else about the plan, they would want to get it back.
Yeah.
So I just thought it's good to make sure before we head into the further scenes of this, we've got our 4 players.
Right.
And Tatiana exists as a separate player because basically she's fucking ignorant, she's absolutely naive, and she's not given any complicated orders from Smirsh.
No, it's just do whatever James Bond tells you to do.
That is literally the only instruction that she's given. So, when later in the movie, when he like slaps her around and says, "Tell me what you know," she quite honestly says, "I don't know shit. They just told me. They just told me to fuck you, and
Yeah.
fucking and do whatever you said."
Yeah.
So there's no information to be gotten out of that interrogation.
Yeah.
Maybe we give spy points for that. I don't know.
Yeah. So now we get to see the briefing from MI6 about the plan, and they basically discuss how obviously it's probably a trap. But our superhero James Bond is no stranger to danger. And we also, I kind of wanted to point this out, earlier, that this is my number 2 best trade craft. Is they know it's a trap, but they're still going to send Bond in because it's a great opportunity to get more info on Spectre, or they don't even know it's Spectre, on Smersh at this point. And if they actually can get the Lecter, they have an opportunity to like be around it, so it may give them an opportunity to steal it.
Sounds
even
good.
if it's a trap. So I like the idea of going in even though they know it's a trap. Next, I think it's Q brings them a briefcase with all kinds of fun gadgets.
Classic.
Yeah, but it's funny that they don't even really become useful till like way later in the film, which is very typical of a Bond film. But
every single item, every single specific item, it's almost like Q has this crystal ball.
Yeah.
That he's already seen. It's almost like he's a time traveler. like
he's reading the script.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, these are the specific things that James Bond will need later."
Yeah.
But that's just something that we laugh about it now, but at the time, I'm sure like audiences weren't like that, clued in.
Yeah. I do want to say though that this particular briefcase actually had a lot of really cool stuff in it that would be universally useful in, I guess, some sort of mission, except for the gas. I think the gas is one of the things that Q foresaw in a crystal ball.
Would have to be a time traveler.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like, the pop-out knife, the like hidden bullion, like there was tons of little cool things on it. But the gas, I think, was a little much, and it was a little too specific. But we'll get into that later.
And you're giving this. It looks like on your notes. It looks like you're giving the briefcase your number 3 best tradecraft of the film.
Yeah, I think it's my number 3, and with the exclusion of the gas, I'm going to say like there's so many little pieces in that briefcase that were beneficial, like on a highly likely being able to be used on a spy mission. Other than the gas, I thought was a little too specific. But yeah, that's pretty much my number 3.
I had a note that I wanted to talk about. I really like that gun. I really like that AR-7. So cool. And I did a little reading on it.
Yep.
Like the fact that like it's incredibly compact because you store. I mean, it's separate. Like you can't just whip it out, in one round. If you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and you said, "I whip out my AR-7," it doesn't work like that. You're gonna need several rounds to put that shit together. But concealing the barrel inside the stock, having the bullets be separate, and I looked into it, and the AR-7 was. Now, what its specific, actual, real-world design is for, let's say you're a bush pilot, or let's say you're I don't know, a person that operates a boat in possibly dangerous situations where it's not like life or death. You're not out there being military at it, but like something dangerous like a crocodile or something. Yeah. Like some situation might occur where you need a firearm.
Right.
And that's what this is specifically designed for. It's like an emergency kit kind of firearm that you can just have.
Oh, kind of like flare gun type of situation.
Exactly. And that's what it's designed for and produced for. But its use in this movie, I thought, was really cool because it looks like a very like secret agent-y kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so good on them for that. I love the IR7.
I think it was a very fun gun. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm into it. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily need to own one, but if I
Right.
was a bush pilot or someone that ran around on boats in weird foreign locations where crocodiles might be a problem, I'd definitely want to pack one of those.
Yeah. Well, next, James gets to Turkey.
Now that he's on the mission,
Yeah,
lands,
now he's officially on the mission. He gets to Turkey.
and the music is ramped up. Ba-da, ba-da-da-da.
Yep. uh, and what does he meet? Salah is the prime minister of Turkey.
No, he's just Sala. Now, let's be clear. Like, Sala is my pet name for this character
Oh, okay.
because I think it's Ali Karim Bey is the
Uh-huh.
actual name of the character, but I'm going to call him Sala because this guy is basically Sala, like from the Indiana Jones movies.
All right.
He is the Middle Eastern guy that like assists and helps our hero very much in the same way that like and I think he has kind of the same like mannerisms maybe. Anyways, we're calling him Sala. But
Okay.
he's not the prime minister or anything. I think he's just like the MI6 contact in the area.
Really? I thought he was the prime minister. Well,
That's not how I read it, but I could be wrong.
so yeah, maybe. Well,
But James lands and makes contact with like a chauffeur that's going to take him to see Sala, and
yeah.
they use the code phrase. I got a cigarette. Do you have a match? No, I always use a lighter. Lighters are better until they go wrong, and then everyone puts their shit away and says, "Okay, it's a handshake, right? It's a handshake code phrase."
Right. And that's how they kind of know everything's cool. They go in and meet. That's yeah. I don't know. That's that's when Salah kind of tells them, yeah, this stinks to high heaven. Everybody pretty much knows this whole story is ridiculous, right? But they're still going full blast in. I guess to try and get as much as they can, and then after meeting him, James goes to check in the hotel, which is nonstop James Bond theme music.
I can't believe how much fucking music is going on in
Yeah.
this exciting, underline exciting scene of James Bond checking into a hotel room.
Yeah, and all he really does is check the phone for bugs, and this is what we need the theme song for.
No, he checks everything. He checks like behind this picture, behind that picture. He checks
That's
the
true. He
chandelier.
does clear the room, but I think
It
the
looks
most
to me.
exciting part
It
in
looks.
this shot sequence is him pulling out a device to check the phone for bugs.
It
Noticing
looks
there's
to me.
bugs.
It looks to me.
Calls for
If
another-
you watch, if you watch that scene again, like it looks to me like he's trying to figure out where the fucking music is coming from. When he does find the bug behind the final picture, I don't know what this thing is, but it's fucking gargantuan.
Yeah.
It is it is enormous, and it's got like a huge cable like running up the wall and back into a hole.
Whoa,
It is like the most. It is the most conspicuous. It beggars belief. Minus 5 points just for like unless, and I haven't figured this out yet. Unless they meant him to find it, but even then, I feel like he should be looking at that thing and saying like, "Oh yeah, this is
Yeah, but I mean, we are in 1963, right? I'm sure they don't have crazy micro devices at this point.
this thing is like the size of a smoke detector."
Yeah.
In fact, I think that's what it is. I think that's what they used as a prop.
Oh, it's just a smoke detector.
All right. Anyways, what you got?
Well, yeah, I mean, like finally he finds the bug and then calls for another room. And obviously all the staff is working for Spectre because Spectre has their hands in everything, right? And so they say there's no rooms available, but he's just like, well, this is too small of a bed.
We're gonna need a
Uh,
bigger bed.
yeah, I think we're gonna need a bigger bed. So they offer him like the suite, and he's like, well, I guess I'll have to see it. And he takes the suite, which is probably bugged to all hell anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want to crouch too hard on this bit, but huge bug, obvious. They know he's gonna find it. Uh, why didn't they just, I don't know, put him in the room they wanted him to be in, or well, also he pulls out a thing. He pulls out a thing and he does a pass on the phone, and he confirms to himself something. It's not clear to me what he's actually confirmed. Maybe he's confirmed. I mean, it looks like he's like satisfied, like aha,
Right.
he's made some connection, but like, what connection has he made? Like, okay, he's certain that he's going to be recorded or monitored when he makes the next phone call, which he makes down to the hotel staff to request the new room. What is that about? What does that accomplish? It just seems like a bunch of like going through the motions and not giving us anything
No, I don't know. There was a lot in this movie that seemed like this, where they just kind of had stuff happen for the sake of it happening.
it was the worst. I thought it was the worst sequence in the movie,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna say this. I think actually I've been really harsh on this movie so far. After this, I think it actually smooths out and gets a lot better.
Gets a lot better, yeah.
But checking into a hotel room is not that exciting, you motherfuckers. I think I was checking some of the contemporary reviews too of the film, and I think they didn't mention the hotel room checking in sequence, but I did notice a few reviewers saying like they're like From Russia with Love. It's a great movie, but let's be honest, some of it drags, and this is definitely one of those parts.
Yeah, there's tons of scenes like this where they're just somewhere and they have to show you them being at somewhere and for no reason.
Meanwhile, while James is checking into the room, we also got to check in on Grant, our villain for this movie. And what he's done, now he's observed James landing and he's got his plan, he's got his Spectre plan, and he's executing it pretty well. What he does here, he kills a Russian operative and dumps the body at the embassy.
Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting play because the Russians don't know that Spectre's involved. They have no idea. And the British and Russians have been monitoring each other like all this time. But as the chauffeur explained to James, like it's all kind of a friendly game. We follow them, they follow us. Blah blah blah. It's just how it's played, and everything's very peaceful. But by Grant killing a Russian and dropping the body off at the embassy, that is a massive fuck you.
Yeah.
Like that's an intentional message that's being
That's the
sent.
mafia stuff, right?
That's a what? What?
That's some mafia stuff.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Like,
it's
dirty.
it's meant to look like the British did it, but it's also, like I said, because it's so blatant and because it's so in your face. It's not like we just killed one of your operatives and like dumped him in a dumpster for you to find later. We killed one of your operatives and fucking rode up to the front of your embassy, dumped the body in the front of your face, and fucking drove off. That is huge. The Russians, thinking it's the British, they have to respond. They have to respond, right?
So they basically bomb Salah's like office, or like, is that his house?
I think it's his house. It's his place of operations.
Yeah.
But yeah, they go straight at what they think is the head of the snake. They go straight for the head of MI6 operations in Turkey, which is Saleh. And they
Right.
try to bomb him, and it's only luckily that he survives. Thereafter, uh, Saleh wants James to go take a look and spy on the Russians and see what they're up to, and they go down into the sewers and use like
Yeah.
like
Just
periscope.
that was another extra scene for here. We get to see a periscope. Yeah.
Yeah, periscope.
Yeah. In the Russian embassy.
This is where Saleh explains to James that Krylenko is most likely the guy that the Russians are employing to try to take him out.
Yeah.
And at the time, James is theorizing incorrectly that the Russian attack on the Turkish is inspired by his visit. It's also an opportunity for us to mention, I think, like the first of many James Bond. James Bond, you're so fucking slimy. You are really slimy. You are incredibly slimy. I'm gonna give you as many points for it being the early 60s. The sexual revolution is happening. I get it. But in hindsight, you don't look so good in hindsight. It's kind of hard. Some of these James Bond things are pretty fucking cringy to watch.
Yeah, they were. It was pretty creeper status to watch, to say the least. Actually,
He's got the view on the room, and when Tatiana comes in, he's just like obsessed with her legs, and he's like, I'd like to see her in the flesh.
yeah.
Yes. And it's the yes that makes it especially slimy.
Yeah.
Yeah, just would not work in contemporary shit. And when we look back at it 50 years later, yeah, not a good look.
No, not at all. So after some gypsy camp bullshit, talk about a full scene of nothing. We get James into the bridal suite, and he smells some perfume, which is odd, plus spy points. But he doesn't really react and just goes and takes a shower, putting himself in a very vulnerable position. Minus spy points. We meet Tatiana, our love interest for the film. What do you think about this, Todd?
You know, I mean, she now, as in later in the film, like she could be playing coy. Like he immediately like starts asking her about the lecture, but she's like, "Oh no, James, let's talk about that later. Let's make sweet love to each other now, and we'll talk about the lecture later." Which seems like it could be like if she was a spy, like she's trying to draw him in, but she's actually not. She just genuinely like is I don't know. I don't know. At what point does she actually like transition from
Being a
pretending
spy to falling in love?
pretending to be in love with him to being in love with him?
Yeah.
The movie really just like fucking forgets to put that important character point in there, and that's why she's like just a throwaway character. She's useless in this.
Well, I think when she saw his pictures, she was intrigued, and when he saw her picture, he was intrigued, right? So I think it was a love at first sight thing or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
All
but
I know
the thing is, I want to go back to this. Like, because her instructions from Smersh are so specific, but have no like complexity to them. Like, she's just supposed to pretend that she's in love with Bond. That's her
Yeah.
whole fucking job. And then at
Right.
some point in the movie, she actually is in love with Bond. And we never, like, as just like a viewing, like, how female characters, like, should be, I don't want to say treated, but respected in some way as people with agency.
Right.
Like, her transition from someone that's pretending to be in love with him to someone that's actually in love with him is never explored. And that's
Yeah.
a huge failure of the movie.
Yeah.
But he was put in motion by the mechanics of the movie that she's just supposed to act this way. That's her only orders. Anyways, let's move on.
Well, I don't know. I'm a little creeped out by the Spectre agent who's just kind of like filming with like the loudest like film recorder in history.
They're not subtle. That's another
No.
sound effects. There's another
No.
sound effects fail.
Yeah, they're very subtle, as I like to say.
They're just outside with what I guess is like a two-way mirror or a one-way mirror or whatever, and like they clackety 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 clackety. Fuck this.
Yeah.
Minus 5 points.
Yeah, minus a lot of spy points. Well, I guess. Wait, next morning, Tatiana's tailed by the glasses dude.
Yeah, so this is there's some weird shit here that I wanted to get into.
Yeah.
The guy that I'm calling Glasses, that's the Russian agent. We've seen him a few times in the movie, but you and I haven't talked about him.
Right.
He spotted James landing in Turkey. He followed Grant.
Yeah.
When Grant abducted, who I think actually, in retrospect, I think was Glasses' driver. And that's why there's a scene where he comes running out and he sees the car peeling off and he's like, what's going on? But anyways, this is the guy that's the stand-in for the Russians trying to pay attention to what's going on.
Right.
Here's an interesting thing. In the morning, after James bangs Tatiana, she goes to the Hagia Sophia and Glasses tails her. Why? There's no indication that the Russians are paying attention to her or should be paying attention to her.
Well, they're watching Bond. Right.
Well, then he should be following Bond instead of following a random cryptographer, unless you have some reason for that, which is fine.
Well, she's a Russian cryptographer, and why is she meeting with Bond?
He doesn't know that she's meeting with Bond.
Yes, they've been watching Bond, presumably, right? They know he's at that hotel.
Okay, I got you. So they see one of their not agents, but one of their employees.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. James is hanging around there, and Grant is hanging around there as well. James notices that Glasses is following Tatiana, and they're in a public space. Remember, it's the Hagia Sophia. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world, and there are museum tours being conducted. So it's a sort of public. It's not crowded, but it's a public space, and I like this. I like that when James notices that Tatiana's being tailed, he pulls out his little PPK, his little classic PPK, and he folds a handkerchief around it. I like this, and I was surprised, like, I'd never seen this before in another movie, but, like, it seems like a really good way to be able to carry a pistol in your hand without looking like you're carrying a pistol in your hand to the casual observer.
Yeah.
I thought I'm gonna give it plus spy points, and I struggled to find my best tradecraft, but this is my number 3 for this movie. Just the way that he conceals the pistol, I thought that was very slick.
Very, very slick.
Here's the weird thing. She's at the Hagia Sophia to place a dead drop. And we've talked about what a dead drop is before. We're not going to do that again. I mean, but essentially it's a way like you can place information in a certain spot and have someone else pick it up, and it doesn't look like the two of you ever met. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Why? They woke up in the same fucking bed that morning.
Right.
Why do they need to then make an elaborate plan to arrange a dead drop? It's no good. Minus 5 points.
I definitely agree. Not sure what was going on. Unless she had to get more info or something, but I don't know why she would need it in Turkey.
I mean, the information he's looking for is for a floor plan of the Russian embassy, because that's going to be part of their plan of stealing the lector.
Yeah.
So, if I'm going to be very forgiving about this part, I would imagine they woke up in the morning, James said, I need a floor plan, and she said, I need some time to draw it out, and James says, okay, drop it in a weird spot in the Hagia Sophia later this afternoon, and I'll pick it up there. It's still kind of flimsy.
Yeah.
Thing is, Glasses, who's tailing Tatiana, sees her make the dead drop, and he goes for it. Grant, our Spectre agent and main villain for the movie, kills Glasses right before he grabs whatever the information is, which, again, like later we're going to find out, it's a floor plan of the Russian embassy. He wanted to make sure that James got the information.
I guess.
He wanted to make sure the Russians didn't get the information.
Right.
That the Russians didn't know what was going on. Okay, plus 5 points for you. You're good. You're good.
Yeah. Grant, I think, is our best man in the movie.
Grant is, I think Grant is almost faultless in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a really slick operator, and I like him as a villain, and I love Robert Shaw's performance as him.
Yeah.
Also, like, this is a weird time to mention this, but I want to, like, we're gonna get Grant some speaking lines later in the movie.
Yeah.
But up until now, he really hasn't said anything. He just like seems like this like wordless killing machine, Terminator, perfect machine that's like just operating, striking here, striking there, doing his shit, right? And I think that's also like something I like about the performance is like that when we do meet him later in the movie and he actually does start speaking, he's using this like super friendly, charming like British voice.
Yeah.
Which
he's kind of like a charming guy, to be honest.
But as an audience, like when that happens, like because we've seen so many of his actions up until then, like we know, and we're kind of a little bit on the edge of our seat. We know that that's a fucking like a false front.
Yeah.
We know that that's a fake British accent, even if James isn't enough to notice it. But yeah, where else were we on? Like, so here we're in the whole process of like trying to steal the lector, right?
Yeah.
So James does get the information. He notices that a Russian got killed. That was Glasses. And there's a little confusion with MI6 about like, well, who would have done that? Well, it definitely wasn't us. Huh, maybe something's up. But yeah, they have the floor plan, which seems to be like their win condition for the next part. Because they're going to now plan the stealing of the lector.
Yeah. There's a bomb that's going to be planted because we talked earlier about the under sewers where there's like a periscope so Salah can spy on the Russians.
It's interesting. We have established that, yes.
Yeah. and Well, he gets into the embassy, or James gets into the embassy, and then there's a bomb that's ready to go off. The bomb goes off. James like goes to take a dump. The cryptography room is flooded with tear gas, and there's like a hole blown into the sewers. It was pretty elaborate. And all things considering that it so happened to have this layout of an undersewers that was prepared a way out for all of them. So it was kind of a nice mini heist within a action spy film.
It's pretty elaborate demolition work. Like you shake the embassy to the core. Somehow you actually like fled the particular room that you're interested in with tear gas, and you happen to blow a hole in an adjacent room to the sewers where your escape route is going to go. I would give points to the demolitionist, but I'm not going to because all this is totally fucking like fantastical. Okay, and I got to stop here too. Here's a flaw, and this is going to be my number one worst tradecraft of the movie, which involves James Bond's plan to steal the Lecter.
Well, it wasn't really James's plan, right? It was kind of like the luring of getting them in because they promised it, right?
But he made the plan.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's true.
So here's the problem with his plan. You can't steal the enemy's decoder and have the enemy know that it was stolen, because if you do that, then it's useless.
That's really silly. What?
There's nothing about this. Did you ever see the movie U-517?
No, but I do know the famous decoder that we found during the war.
Right.
With the Germans, we found it, and we had to do a lot to keep it hidden from people.
Right, and the Lecter is specifically, like, it's been stated, like, it's specifically, like, a reference to that World War II German decoder device.
Yeah.
The movie U-517, it's a submarine movie. You could find different flaws in it, but I just fucking love submarine movies. But at least in that movie, the plot was they were able to figure out a way to try to steal the German decoder device in a way that the Germans would not know that it was
stolen.
Because the Germans would have thought that their submarine had just sunk to the bottom of the sea, where in fact the Americans had like made their way away from it. That's what you want. That's what you want. You want to have their decoder device and not have them know that you have their decoder device. You blow up an embassy. They're gonna notice that the Lecter is gone.
Yeah.
As well as the cryptographer that was assigned to
that they've been watching.
That they have been watching.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not a huge flaw in the whole like thing of the movie, but that's again why I want to bring it back to like paying attention to what each player's win condition is. In this case, this MI6 plan to steal the Lecter, it's a fail.
Yeah.
My number one worst tradecraft, I'll give it to that. Let's move on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Well, they get to the train with the Lecter, and they're on the run, right?
They are on the run, so they've made an escape plan. And I want to give Spectre some points for this, too. Like, sort of points. That Spectre's plan, remember, their plan is to get James access to the Lecter. Yeah. They want him to steal it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
But they don't know how he's going to get it out of Turkey. So their plan necessarily involved, at a certain point, like, we're going to have to improvise.
Right. And they do. They do. In fact, they do quite a bit of improvisation. Like, they had to watch some code shakes, which they didn't pull off perfectly, but got away with, right?
I guess. I mean, I don't know how Grant knows that their escape plan, like, because Grant is already on the train. He's on the train before they're on the train. So that means he knows, hold on. That means, logically, he knew what their escape plan was. He knew what their escape plan was. He knew the date that they were gonna do it. He knew the hour and the date. There's a mole in the Turkish intelligence thing.
Yeah.
That's the only way it makes sense. There's someone that's telling Grant like what's going on. Also, hold on. Let's go back to the Russians. The Russian security guy, the head security guy of the Russians, just wait, hold on, happens to be having lunch right at the train station that James Bond and Tatiana are planning to use. Like, there's something there. Minus spy points for the movie. I don't want to assign it as problems with like what people are doing here, but like there's something like just too fucking convenient about all this shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got another one. I got another one for you too.
Yeah.
This is my number 2. Hot on the heels of my number 1. Think about this. Glasses, we established, was tailing Tatiana.
Right.
So Glasses, that's a Russian, right? Or at least he's a Bulgarian working for the Russians. But we'll just call him a Russian for now.
Right.
That's the color of his piece on this game board. He's tailing Tatiana. That means he's suspicious of Tatiana.
Right.
If your agent is suspicious of a cryptographer, why aren't you more prepared for an attack on the Lecter?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my number 2.
That's a good one.
I don't know who to assign those minus points for that. Maybe Glasses fucked up and didn't tell his superiors, like, hey, Tatiana's working with James Bond.
Yeah.
That would be his bad.
Yeah.
Maybe he did, and they didn't, like, do anything about it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, also, like, again, like, just in case I didn't put a pin in it, there's something fishy about, like, the Russians, and the Russians know too much and too little. Spectre knows way too much about, like, what's going on with MI6's Lecter stealing operation. And so I'll just give some minus spy points for Sala on his whole Turkish operation. I think it's a leaky boat.
Yeah. It's getting pretty bad.
It's gonna get better.
Yeah.
I hope
it'll pick up a little bit, but not by much. I mean, but so we're on the train, and the plan is to have some like road blockade on the tracks to get the train to stop, take a waiting car to an airstrip, and fly away happily ever after to Britain.
Sounds good, but we got some complications. We've got Benz, the Russian counter spy guy, and we've got Grant both on the train.
Right.
Although we don't know that yet.
No.
Although I think we immediately
we
actually
as an audience knows that, but I don't think our players know that.
right. But that changes a little bit because Solid does take note of Ben's checking up on their rooms. That's the Russian guy. He made it onto the train before it left the station. And he grabs James and he says, "Hey, dude, you know the Russian guy's on the train, right?" James makes a very confident assessment of the situation here. He says, like, "Well, there's no way that that the Russian guy could have warned the Russians before he boarded the train. So this guy's just operating on his own." That's not right.
No.
In fact, it's like, in fact, like he did have plenty of time to tell his buddy to go. He literally did like give instruction to his goon that he was having lunch with at the train station, like, go tell the Russians what is happening. So minus spy points for James.
Yeah. So James and Sala capture Benz. They kind of get the drop on him, and James leaves Sala to guard him. However, during this time, Grant comes in and kills both Benz and Sala and makes it look like a murder-suicide. And James finds this out just before he was supposed to meet in the dining car with Sala. The conductor thought they killed each other, which was kind of silly because there's a freaking knife in Sala's back.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure how that works that they killed each other.
He didn't take a solid look at it, so maybe it was just kind of like, oh my God, people are dead. They must have killed each other, or something like.
You might notice that there's a knife in one of the dude's backs, and how would that happen? So, Mr. Conductor, I'm glad you found your calling in life as a train conductor, but you are no detective.
Yeah.
Minus detective points.
Yeah.
So like as the train, James and Sala were supposed to meet in the dining car.
Right.
And he gets this news that Sala and Benz have quote unquote killed each other.
Right.
Right before that was supposed to happen. And thereafter, the train rolls right past the border where Sala's son was waiting. And remember, the plan was Sala was going to bribe the conductor to stop the train at a specific point. They were going to get off, get into a car, drive to an airstrip, fly to England. Game, set, match. Here's my problem with this, and this is why this is my number 3 worst tradecraft. I hope I have these in order, but James and conductor, you could have, and you should have, just stuck to the plan. You should have stopped the train as planned. You could have gotten out, gotten in the car, and you'd be done.
Yeah.
Just stick to the plan. Minus 5 points.
Yeah.
But what does James do instead?
Well, he kind of stays on the train and confronts Tatiana, thinking that she had something to do with his murder, and goes psycho. Well, I mean, his homie just got killed, so I guess it kind of makes sense he'd be really upset. And he knows that she's a Smersh agent, so he thinks that he got played here. But I mean, it's still kind of a jump to conclusion.
I think there's some wild leaps.
Beat a woman. It's just a woman beating scene.
Just blame the woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not cool, James.
Not cool at all. Yeah. He did jump to some serious conclusions.
Yeah. Just immediately this is fucked up. Yeah. Minus 5 points for sure. Yeah. So having, for some stupid reason that's not explained, like not following through on the plan, which was a good plan, James waits until the train gets to Belgrade, where for some reason he expects to be met by someone, even though, again, that was not part of the plan. They were supposed to be off the train like a long time ago. But another one of Sala's sons meets him here, and they exchange again the cigarette lighter passcode. He tells the son, that your father's dead, and the son is like, as a proper Middle Easterner, he's like, tell me who did this. I will have my revenge. But James tells him, like, no, the other guy died first. And again, James, did you not see the knife in Sala's back? Minus you again. But what James does here, he gives instructions for the son. So, like, James now, needs a backup plan. Even though, again, and I'll only say it one more time, the first plan was fine. There was nothing wrong with the first plan. You don't have a plan in this situation. But he wants M to send an agent. M is like his boss at MI6. To send an agent to meet him at the next station, or at least a station further down the line in Zagreb.
Yeah.
Grant, our villain, observes all of this, and when they get to Zagreb, Grant uses the cigarette lighter passcode, the "Have you got a match? I always use a lighter. Those are better until they fail," yada yada, which we've seen many times in this film.
Yeah.
Grant knows the passcode. He knows the passcode.
Yeah.
It was a little fuzzy to me whether I think like at some points in the movie it was meant to be, and I really want to know how this shaked out in the novel. Because in the movie, I think there's two interpretations of Grant knowing the passcode. Number one, he was able to observe James giving Sala's son the passcode and therefore learned it from that. But since he was only able to observe it, he only knew the part of it, but not the exact. That's one theory.
Yeah.
Another theory is, which is like easier, like later in the movie, he says like, "We sweated the passcode out of your man in Tokyo." But I have a feeling in the novel, like there's certain things, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but certain things that make me think like it was meant to be initially that Grant knew part of the passcode, and so he was able to pull it off. But like when he used it on James, which is later, like just in a few minutes, that he used it incorrectly, and that James knew that Grant was an enemy, which seems like way more fun, but way more complicated. But my number one best tradecraft, regardless, in Zagreb, as the agent that James requested to meet them for their Plan B, Grant intercepts Agent Y, who's is a guy named Nash, and takes his place. And he bushwhacks him, puts on his hat and his mannerisms, and then approaches James and says, "Hey, I'm the guy that M sent to help you out."
This is kind of also where I kind of fall off. This is kind of the first half of my number one worst tradecraft. My number one worst tradecraft is like Bond trusting Grant at any point in their interaction towards the train scene.
It's pretty bad.
It's silly. I mean, like, not only did he get the passcode kind of like not perfect, but he asked him like, "So what are your orders?" He was like, "To watch you and the girl." Ha! Like, it's such a generic response, and it's kind of is what sets off the like, what is this? This is 007. This is supposed to be our super spy, and he literally like lets this dude gets the drop on him like for the. I mean, why this train scene took so long to like, trick James Bond is beyond me, because he just like trusts him from like the get go. Like he's a little cautious, just like generic spy cautious, but it's like he's like, "Oh yeah, this guy's with us." Doesn't know the dude. The guy messed up the password and like gave the most generic response. So this is like the beginning of my number one worst tradecraft.
Just the beginning.
Just the whole train scene, and why Bond ever trusted Grant is like beyond me. But this moment, I'm like, he should have had his spy senses going. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I agree with you on several things. Like, there's a whole bunch of points where James gets clues, and like the audience gets clues that James should have picked up on, and even that we see James looking like he is picking up on.
Yeah.
I also think like and this might be quibbling, but the Grant as Nash character seems very cocky and cool about like the conclusion of the mission. Like it looks like he's just like, oh yeah, another day at the office. Don't fucking worry about anything.
Yeah.
I think he should at least pretend to be a little more concerned about the fact that Sala and the Russian dude were killed on the train. And like I think James also, that's another point where James is like fucking up, is like he's not concerned. Like it seems like the first thing that Nash, although that's actually Grant, but the first thing that Nash and Bond should be doing as soon as they meet is saying like, okay, dude, what the fuck? Like Sala and Russian dude looked like they killed each other. But like that doesn't make any sense. So let's like start putting these pieces of the puzzle together. But they don't do any of that. They don't do any of that. They just go on with Plan B, even though again, Plan A was fine.
Yeah. But this moves on. I guess this progresses into more and more how Grant should not have been trusted whatsoever. And I know I'm skipping ahead quite a bit in the train scene, but they're at dinner with Grant and Tatiana and James, and Grant just like poisons Tatiana's drink with like, we don't know if it's poison or if it's a drug or whatever, but he does it right in front of Bond and makes sure Bond sees it. So,
well, I'm not sure he made sure Bond sees it, but Bond notices.
Bond notices it. I think, I don't know. I don't know. I'm from the theory that, Grant purposely let him see it. But even if he didn't, that's going to lead into my number 3 worst tradecraft. But this also kind of also supports what my number 1 was, where like you just watched this dude you've never met drug or poison your girl. And you're still kind of like aloof to all this. Now, my concern with Grant purposely letting Bond see this or messing up and Bond seeing this is now he's lost all form of integrity. Like, if I was Bond and I'm like, this dude I just met just started drugging my girl I've been running with, and his excuse is like, well, do you want the Lecter or the girl? Like, this guy's trying to run the situation and like force me into making decisions. I'm going to get a little suspicious. Even if he's telling the truth, even if he's like Super Spy McGee and he's like, look, the Lecter's more important than the girl. We got to drop the weight and let's go. Like, I'm still going to be watching your ass. I don't know you. What are you doing drugging her in the first place? You know what I mean? Like I would have had my eyes on him every moment of the way. And pretty much that's not what happens. I do you want to lead us into the next spot where Grant gets the drop on Bond?
Oh, no. I just go for it, dude. Go for it. I'm going to come back with a couple of notes later, but I want you to go ahead and get this out of your system. So I know this is the first thing. This is the first thing when we agreed to do this movie, and like the day after, like you had seen this movie, this is the part that you were screaming at me about. So I really want to just let you fucking get it out of your system.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, I mean, he literally just watched this guy drug and or possibly poison like Tatiana, who we have both like the whole film, like we're supposed to believe that
James doesn't know. Like it turns out that it's chloral hydrate, which is stated in the movie. And then hold on, real quick, Maura, give us the read on chloral hydrate.
Chloral hydrate is for short-term use as a sedative or sleep medicine. It is sometimes given before a surgery to help you relax.
Okay, I'm impressed. So +2 realism points for the film. But James Bond doesn't know. It could have been fucking arsenic.
Yeah, and she could have been dead or whatever, but she's like passing out, which is another moment where they kind of shat on Tatiana. Like they made her look like some lightweight. She's not feeling well. Let's just go take her back to the room. They take her back to the room, and then they step into the other side of the room with Grant and James Bond. And James is like, "So what's that you put in her drink?" And then the story's told. Oh yeah. Do you want the Lecter or the girl? Come on, we got to go make decisions.
Well, he says. I mean, he tries to play it off. Remember, he says like, "My escape plan is just for one."
Yeah, it's so like over the top. It's so over the top. But let's say he was telling the truth. You just watched him like drug the person that you're running away with that was part of the plan that you were supposed to run away with. And then your homie was just murdered, right? Like there's so many reasons why you should just be like on your toes. And he's still like, yeah, whatever. And then Grant's like, let's take a look at this map.
But remember, Dave.
Yeah.
He's got a tear gas thing.
I know, and he's got a this is even the which, by the way, we didn't even get to discuss this. I think it's in the notes for later, but earlier, before they went to dinner, James actually swapped the gear gas container from his briefcase to Grant's briefcase. So,
really?
Yeah.
You mentioned that to me. I did not catch that in the movie.
Yeah. So this is important later because this is Q being the like premonition god that he is, knowing that
the time traveler.
Yeah, time traveler. All he needs is a tear gas container in his briefcase, and he'll win the day. You know, specific like over the top, like arbitrarily armed by specific switches and stuff, like to make it more complicated. And yet it's the thing that saves his life, you know. But forgetting all of that, Grant's like, hey, let's go over this map and talk about our escape plan.
Yeah.
It's just sitting there, not even paying attention to Grant. And Grant pulls out did he pull out like a flapjack?
I don't understand. It looks like a knife, but then instead of stabbing James in the neck, he just like clubs him over. But that's because he wants to put out like a bunch of exposition, which only makes sense. I did give a little bit of forgiveness, like so much. Like at this point, when they're sitting there, right? We're ready for this, right? When they're sitting there and James is like, so it was this, and Grant is like, yep, it was like that, and so James is like, oh, so it was this, it was happening, and Grant just like explains it all, just like this super, like what we now come to think of as this absolute fucking trope that would not play with audiences at all, where the villain just fucking like explains everything.
Is this our first moment of a trope where the villain explains everything?
I think this is where it really starts. I mean, I think this is where it really starts getting cooking, because there's like just the whole idea of the villain, like at the end of the movie, near the end of the movie, having the hero in an unwinnable situation where they're just willing to like explain everything. I think this has been like trolled through with like comedy and parody like for decades and decades and decades, but I think this is where it starts. Grant really just fucking like explains so much shit.
His whole life story and why he did what.
No.
And they took credit for saving James Bond's life so that he could get him to trust him.
Yeah.
It was silly. It was absolutely silly. Well, at this point, James realizes, and this is where like there's so much of the briefcase that's really cool. I think this is when the briefcase actually gets used. He's like, he realizes Grant's like, working for the money. He's not really working for a purpose. And he's like, look, I got a buttload of gold bullion in my briefcase. Why don't you take a look? So he offers him the gold bullion, and then they get into a squabble, right? And that's when I think Grant opens his own briefcase, and that's where the tear gas comes in and now starts the fight. And James wins the fight, of course. I just think it was so silly that just this tear gas is what saved his life.
I gotta tip.
Arbitrary. What?
I got a tip for Grant for
Yeah.
next time. Next time, poison James Bond.
Yeah.
Next time, if you have the super agent and the stupid like Patsy doll
Right.
at your table, and you have one poison pill, and you can
Yeah.
poison one of them.
Yeah.
Fucking poison the super agent.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm giving myself 10 spy points on that tip right now.
Yeah.
Maybe Spectre needs a Q time traveler.
I know, right? That's what they're missing. That's what they're missing.
Right.
Is a traveling gadget making British guy.
You know what? Let's stop for a second though before we move on to the rest of the movie, which is like mostly action and not a lot of tradecraft. But I mean, the performances, like the tension, like I thought the scene, you know, the train car scene, like it's shot well, it's performed well, it's full of tension. I think that's what a lot of people like about this movie. I think Robert Shaw delivers.
I think the train scene is like the only part of the movie that was like really fun and not weird. The only issue was the weird poisoning and the gas, the tear gas. But other than that, yeah, it was pretty solid.
Maybe
Yeah.
when they checked into their train car room, we could have had some more ba-da-ba-da, ba-da-da.
Yeah. Where was the theme song when he was just like taking a look at the little bench of a room they get?
He doesn't check the train car for bugs.
No, he doesn't.
No. Alright. Let's get at it. Let's move on. There's a bunch of action stuff that happens after, but like mainly I think the tradecraft here has been like digested and we've done that. But they basically make their escape from here on out.
Yeah.
But you had something to talk about. I mean, there's a helicopter scene, there's a boat scene.
Yeah, there's like a chase and a gunfight or whatever, but there's this well, I think Grant's plan was to block the train and then take the car. It was like a Jeep or a truck blocking the train tracks, and that's how they were going to get out and like run away. But after that, the Spectre helicopter shows up and starts chasing James Bond, which James Bond runs away to like lure them away from Tatiana and whatever. But like the helicopter, everyone in the helicopter had a machine gun. There was at least like 2 or 3 dudes with machine guns, and not a single one of them took a shot. All this helicopter did was try and hit him. And I don't know if that's the safest way to use your helicopter. They were
oh right, like just oh I remember now. Like they just like tried to like swoop down and make him duck.
Yeah, and he had to like duck and roll and like dive every time the helicopter flew by. And they never.
No, the smart thing to do is just like put the helicopter in a certain position and fucking like nuke him down with machine gun fire.
Yeah, or do something.
And if he moves, like you move the helicopter. That's what helicopters do.
Yeah, and like it's literally like he's out in an open field too. Up until the one point where he finds cover in some rocks. But like most of the place that they're at is like just open grassland. And they're diving the helicopter to basically risk crashing the helicopter because they're flying so close to the ground. You know, it's this is getting number 2 worst tradecraft. Why didn't they just shoot him? Yeah. It was annoying. All right, so after the helicopter scene, there's a boat chase scene that's even sillier than the helicopter scene, and they get away. Then we get back to Spectre headquarters, and number 1 is sitting there with number 3 and number 5, and he's really pissed. And he's got his cat, which is our typical Bond cat.
Right, and we haven't mentioned this, and let's put a pin in it. This is
Yeah.
the original fucking evil villain stroking his cat
Yeah.
kind of dude.
Yeah. This was super OG, hanging out with his cat. Yeah.
Which again, going back to the whole like Spectre thing, like I always thought like that was just one of a rogues gallery of like villains that James Bond fought. I didn't realize that this was a guy that is in the almost all of the first 7 movies as this like super villain. Whereas James Bond, like he'll always have a villain, but there's always this one guy, this number one. I think I forget his name right now, but I want to talk. Yeah, like I want to talk about this scene with you.
Well, what happens is number one's pissed, and he brings in like a big thug.
Why is he pissed? Why is he pissed? He's pissed because Grant is dead.
Yeah.
He's pissed because James Bond is alive.
Yeah.
He's pissed because he doesn't have a Lecter.
Yeah. And he's pissed that there isn't a nuclear war.
Right.
Well, so he's trying to figure out who to blame. He brings in a thug, and he's like, failure's never an option. So one of them have to die. And they basically argue
One
over
of who?
Number 3 and number 5.
Number 3 is the creepy
agent. She's kind of like the crazy staffing it. She found Grant. She found Tatiana. She pretty much set up. She basically executed number 5's plan, and number 5 is the mastermind behind the whole plan. That we all agree was a fantastic plan, but the number 3 and number 5 basically have to argue in front of number 1 whose fault is it.
Right. Was it a failure of the plan that number 5 put in place, or was it a failure of execution that number 3 put in place?
Right. And, number 5 is basically greasing up number 1 and talking about how amazing number 1 is, and that his own plan was flawless. Number 3's excuse was that it was James Bond, that everything was working fine, and it was just James Bond is such an amazing spy, which, as we've discussed, I have yet to figure out where that comes from. But well, you know what it is? It's the hotel scene where he found the bugs. That's how we know he's a super spy. But anyway, yeah, they argue over it, and when she tries to claim it's James Bond, number 5 even continues to suck up to number 1. He's like, oh, but James Bond is nothing compared to number 1, blah, 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 and yada, whatever. And number 1 decides to have number 5 killed. And I think, Todd, you wanted to talk about this. Like, why does number 5 deserve the blame?
I did want you to talk about this. Let's hear it.
Well, I wanted to hear what your thoughts were. I don't know. Like, I mean,
I think we disagree on this. I think number 3 is the fuck up. I think the plan was good, and I think that if I were to find fault in the plan, I would put. I don't know. I don't think Tatiana was the right agent. I think you put an actual fucking agent in play instead of a fucking naive, dumb blonde. You could argue that maybe the James Bond would have smelt her out. And I don't mean to be mean against the Tatiana character. It's just that the Tatiana character is so fucking dumb as written. That's not a slant against women. I'm not trying to be misogynistic about this, but she's fucking got nothing to do in this movie.
No.
I don't know. I feel like if I'm number 1 of Spectre and I'm looking at number 3 and number 5 and choosing which of these two are most valuable to me. I think I'm going with number 5. I'm going to keep that. If I was playing this as a board game, I would keep number 5, lose number 3. I understand you have reasons that you disagree, which have to do, again, I think, with his attitude.
That's mainly what it was for me. See, I think number 3 was right, that it was James Bond and not the I don't think it was a failure on Spector's part. I think it was more a failure of the movie. No, because I think she picked the right guy. She picked Grant, who was like a piece of meat, like superstar.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, and then she picks Tatiana, who was perfect, and then gave her the only orders were just do what James Bond says, because they knew they didn't want her to have too much involvement. They wanted her just to like follow along and maybe fall in love with him or make him fall in love with her or whatever. And I think it was fine. What bothered me, well, the reason why I think number 1 didn't kill number 3 is because number 3 probably still had an opportunity to do it. Because number 5 isn't like a on-the-ground type of guy to get the Lecter. Now he has to spend months planning another plan when number 3 can go out and figure out a new thing. And she does. And she makes her last final hurrah play at getting the Lecter herself.
Yeah, I mean, she proves herself in that way. Like, she definitely, proves
she actually had a good plan, too.
The loyalty to put her own ass on the line and go out and try to salvage a bad situation. So that is definitely some points for number 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And she did it, and she did a pretty good job. She pretended to be a maid, or at least got herself...
She's got some skills. She's got some skills.
And almost walked out the door with the Lecter. She was like out the door, and then James Bond spotted it. It was like, don't worry, I'll carry that.
Agents, please report for debriefing on this operation. The director will see you now.
All right, so David, you think we're ready to come in from the cold now?
Absolutely, let's do it.
This exposure of ours through this quest on this podcast and through the research we've done, that James Bond is so fucking important. Love him, hate him. I didn't like him in this movie.
No,
we're gonna get to that.
I don't like him either.
He is so important. Dr. No shows up in 1961. By 1970, there are a billion fucking spy movies and spy television shows and shows and exploration of the spy hero as a concept. And it just goes on and on from there. It's like a Cambrian explosion. I Googled most recognizable hero or most recognizable movie characters of all time. And I checked 8 of them before we started recording. He's in the top 5 on every single one of them. He's in the league with Darth Vader and Indiana Jones. Seem to be his best competition. And all the different kind of spy movies and spy characters that you and I do like. This guy deserves respect, even if we don't like him personally, and I kind of don't like him personally.
He's kind of a slime ball.
I don't like him.
No.
I don't.
I don't like him either.
There's a bunch of fucking wish fulfillment going on with this guy, right?
Yeah.
He gets the girl, he fucking flies around, he's got this account, all his shit is paid for. He gets to kill people and not go to court the next day.
He's kind of like what every guy wished they could be type of thing. But I guess guys at the time, because I definitely don't want to be him at all.
Me neither.
Yeah.
No.
I'm gonna give it a 2. because it wasn't terrible enough for me to give it a 1, but it still wasn't really that good. I did not enjoy watching this movie. There was maybe like a couple moments where I kind of like snickered or like we're like, that's kind of cool. But yeah, I did like the briefcase though. Other than the gas really pissed me off.
I'm with you, and my rating is also a 2.
Yeah.
It's an interesting artifact. It's a fascinating artifact.
Yeah.
But as far as an enjoyable movie, shit's moved on. I'd much rather watch some fucking Jason Bourne movies or.
Yeah, I know, right? If we're gonna watch an action movie like this, there's a lot more that we can watch now, right? Yeah. I don't know.
Or movies that have like more complex and compelling spycraft.
Yeah.
I love that this movie like hints at those a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe this movie, in my opinion, like might have been better if they had gone ahead and leaned into the Cold War kind of thing instead of creating this like, fantasy specter fictional nonsense. But
Really, I really like Spectre. In fact, I think they should just make a movie about Spectre.
well, they did, and it's they did it. They brought him back. They brought Spectre back in the whatchamacallit, the Daniel Craig movies.
Yeah,
Which, by the way, there's another one out there. There's another one out there. Might bring it all to a conclusion.
yeah. Did they make a movie about Spectre though? I want to see that movie where we get to see if Spectre can complete their program. I guess I don't know.
I'm going to remind the audience of my best tradecraft impressions of this movie. My number 3, concealing the pistol with a handkerchief. I liked it.
Yeah, that was cool.
It's a dope little play. It's subtle, but it works for me. My number 2, I like the Spectre's plan. I think it's a winner. It's ambitious, but it's possible, and it accomplishes 4 different objectives. Number 1, best though, and again, because according to Spectre's plan, like I said, like they were gonna have to improvise at some point. Grant does improvise brilliantly in Zagreb, where he takes the place of Agent Y.
So my number 3, minus the gas, the briefcase, and all of its little doodads, I think were very well thought out. I think my number 2 was spending Bond in, even though they knew it was probably a trap. I think it was a great opportunity for more info and possibly to snatch the Lecter, even though it was obviously the bait. And then my number 1 was Spectre pretending to Tatiana that, and I'm going to correct myself, to Smersh, pretending they were Smersh generals or whatever. And I thought that was very well executed planning. And then I guess moving along to our worst, my number 3 was when Grant purposely or accidentally let Bond see the drugging. That was super bad. I don't know why he had to drug him in the first place. The helicopter action scene was my number 2 worst. I don't know why you're going to endanger the helicopter when you got machine guns. It was just a waste. And my number 1 was why the hell did Bond trust Grant at any moment in their interaction on the train? I don't get it. And I'm still trying to figure out how Bond is our super spy. I'm missing it. But yeah, I don't know. What were your worst, Todd?
My number 3 worst, and man, I mean, I think these are pretty bad. All of them are pretty bad. My number 3 worst is just stick to the plan, you fucking dummies. Salah got killed, but you still have a plan in place. The conductor's still supposed to stop the train at a certain point. Like, just do that, game, set, match.
Yeah, it's over.
Bad tradecraft. Instead, you fucking, turn on the fucking dumb blonde girl. and like try to slap her around, get some information out of her. Guess what? She don't know shit.
Yeah.
My number 2 goes to the Russians.
Yeah.
Right. Again, like I don't know why Glasses was following Tatiana, but when assuming that they had suspicion of their cryptographer, the fact that the guy tailing her disappeared and was killed should have put them on high alert.
Yeah.
And they didn't do it. That's my number 2.
Yeah.
My number 1 worst though goes to MI6. Hey, this is interesting. I accidentally placed equal blame on all the agencies in the movie.
Nice. Nice.
My number 1 worst, again, like MI6, I love your plan to steal the Lecter, but guess what? You can't steal a decoder device. It's not valuable to you if the enemy knows that you stole it.
Yeah.
And blowing up their embassy in order to steal it is a way that they're gonna know that they're gonna they're gonna go through the rubble at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're gonna figure out that it's missing.
So redactions. We're rating it on 1 to 5. 1 redaction reflects a very realistic spy movie. 5 has no basis in reality whatsoever. Where am I going on this? 3.5?
3.5 sounds good to me.
All
I
right.
mean, it's a lot of the stuff in this movie is kind of unbelievable, but the idea of like a corporate conglomerate trying to set up a situation that they can profit off of two governments.
And the players of the British and Russians are historically accurate.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
in what we might imagine that they were doing in Turkey at the time.
Yeah. Wait, so wouldn't that be a 2.5? Because a 5 is no basis in reality whatsoever. So maybe we should give it a 3. A 5 is no basis in reality. So 3.5 would be closer to 5.
Let's call it a 3 and get out of here, buddy.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. And that's the end of our show. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at spies_like_us. Visit us on our website at www.spieslikeus.net. Find out about upcoming episodes. Also, what will really help us out is if you give us a review on wherever you found our podcast, either on iTunes or your Android app or YouTube or wherever you listen to us. Even if you didn't like the show, just give us a review. It'll help us, give us feedback so we can make the show better. And it can also help other people who haven't found the show yet find out about us. Hey, Moira, initiate Protocol 9.
Protocol 9 initiated. This podcast will self-destruct in 20 seconds. The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautics, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.